It was a cool autumn evening when Imani Lewis took the stage at the Grand Orion Concert Hall. The hall's soft, amber lights danced upon the polished wooden floor as the audience settled into a hushed anticipation. Dressed in an elegant cream dress and carrying her cherished violin in a case that had belonged to her late mentor, Imani exuded both poise and quiet determination. Every detail of her appearance had been carefully prepared by her father, Darius Lewis, a man known for his meticulous care and boundless love for his daughter. Earlier that day, Darius had spent hours braiding Imani's hair into intricate patterns that were as much a part of her identity as the notes she would soon play. To him, those braids were a crown symbolizing their shared heritage, a visual testament to the pride and joy he felt in her accomplishments. Imani had just finished her breathtaking solo performance, and as the final note of her violin's melody echoed through the hall, the audience erupted into thunderous applause. Her performance was a triumph, a testament to years of disciplined practice and the deep passion that flowed through every fiber of her being. The glowing reviews and the standing ovation had filled her with a rare sense of fulfillment. Yet, amid the celebration and warmth of that moment, no one could have foreseen the dark twist that awaited her later that night. After the concert, Imani stepped out into the cool night air. The busy city streets were bathed in the soft glow of street lamps, and the gentle patter of rain added an almost cinematic quality to the scene. With her heart still soaring from the performance, she began the short walk home along a quiet boulevard. The memory of the evening's accolades filled her with quiet pride, and she recalled fondly the reassuring words of her father earlier that day. "Your music is your voice, Imani. Never let anyone silence it." These words resonated deeply within her, reinforcing her resolve to always stand up for herself and for what she believed in. However, fate had a cruel twist in store. As Imani strolled under the rainy sky, lost in thought and the lingering euphoria of her performance, she noticed a marked change in the atmosphere. A sleek, dark patrol car rolled slowly behind her, its flashing red and blue lights reflecting off the wet pavement. The vehicle came to a stop behind her, and the window rolled down with a mechanical hiss. A stern voice, laced with an authority that brooked no argument, spoke from inside. "Stop right there. What are you doing out here at this hour?" demanded Officer Karen Price. Her tone was harsh and unforgiving, leaving no room for explanation or pleading. Startled, Imani clutched her violin case tightly to her chest. "I've just finished a performance at the concert hall," she replied softly, her voice trembling slightly as she tried to maintain composure. "I'm on my way home." Officer Price's eyes narrowed as she scrutinized Imani from head to toe. "That hairstyle you were sporting," she said in a measured tone, "looks suspicious. It is not common for someone your age to have such elaborate braids. I have seen too many cases where that style is linked to gang affiliations." Imani's heart sank. She knew that the braids were the handiwork of her father, meant to honor tradition and celebrate her identity. "Sir, these braids were done by my father this morning," she explained, trying to keep her voice steady. "He braided my hair carefully for my performance. They are part of who I am." But Officer Price was unmoved by Imani's words. Her face hardened with an expression of contempt and misplaced authority. "I do not care who did them," she declared coldly. "We have protocols, and I must verify your identity. Hand over your bag." The officer reached for Imani's violin case. In that moment, Imani's eyes welled with tears, not only from fear, but from the profound humiliation of having her cherished symbol of identity reduced to a mere stereotype in the eyes of a law enforcement officer. "Please, I do not wish to cause any trouble," she pleaded softly, her voice quivering with a mixture of sorrow and indignation. Officer Price, her face unmoved by any appeal, continued her tirade. "You must come with me. I will need to take you to the station for further questioning. And I warn you, if you do not cooperate, I will not hesitate to act." Imani's protests fell on deaf ears as Officer Price cuffed her wrists roughly. The chill of the rainy night deepened the coldness in Imani's heart as she was led toward the patrol car. Her eyes, still reflecting the spark of the performance, now shone with tears of despair. The world around her blurred into a nightmarish haze as the officer's grip tightened, and the precious braids that had once been a symbol of love and pride were about to be mercilessly taken from her. Inside the back seat of the patrol car, Imani sat silently, her trembling hands still clutching her violin case. She could hear the muffled sounds of the city and the distant hum of traffic as she stared out of the rain-streaked window. Every second felt like an eternity as the officer drove to the station, her mind swirling with confusion and heartache. How could someone be so quick to judge based solely on appearance? How could a single act of prejudice tarnish a night that had been filled with beauty and art? At the police station, the cold fluorescent lights and the sterile environment offered no comfort. Imani was escorted into a small, cramped holding room where she was forced to sit on a metal chair. Her once immaculate dress was now damp from the rain, and the intricate braids that had been so lovingly crafted earlier that day hung heavily on her head. In that moment, Imani felt stripped of her identity, as if every strand of her hair represented a piece of her dignity being torn away. Hours passed slowly in that holding cell. Imani's mind raced with thoughts of her father, Darius Lewis, and the pride he had instilled in her. She recalled the gentle way he had explained the significance of each braid, telling her that they were a mark of beauty, strength, and heritage. Now, in the cold, unyielding glare of the police station, those same braids were seen as a threat by a heart hardened by prejudice. She wondered if her father knew what had happened to her, and if he could somehow make things right. Unbeknownst to Imani, Darius Lewis was not an ordinary man. By day, he was a devoted single parent who had overcome countless hardships to raise his daughter with love and care. But beneath the surface of his quiet life, Darius carried a secret identity. For years, he had been working undercover for a federal agency dedicated to dismantling dangerous criminal organizations. His latest mission involved infiltrating a notorious network that had long evaded justice. Every decision he made, every sacrifice he endured, was part of a larger plan to bring down those who exploited the vulnerable. That evening, as Imani languished in the holding cell, Darius was deep in preparation for a critical phase of his operation. He had been gathering intelligence for months, risking his life to gather evidence that could bring down a powerful criminal syndicate. His mind was focused on the mission, and his heart was heavy with the burden of living a double life. When he received a distress call from one of his trusted contacts about a sudden development in the case, he immediately sensed that something was amiss. He tried to reach Imani by phone, but there was no answer. A cold dread began to seep into his thoughts as he recalled every word he had spoken to her that morning, every embrace that had conveyed his unwavering love and protection. Darius rushed from his safe house, his heart pounding as he navigated the labyrinthine streets of the city. His mind was a flurry of plans and contingencies as he attempted to locate the police station where his daughter was being held. He recalled the way Imani's eyes had sparkled with excitement after her performance, and how her braids had been a testament to their shared culture and strength. Now, the image of those braids, defiled by an act of senseless prejudice, ignited a burning determination within him. He would not allow the injustice to stand. Inside the police station, Officer Price continued her rigid enforcement of protocol with no regard for the human cost. She had never considered the consequences of her actions beyond the immediate situation. To her, Imani was nothing more than a statistic, a young girl who did not conform to her narrow expectations. The cold, bureaucratic procedures blinded her to the dignity and humanity of the child before her. As she prepared to carry out further actions that would strip Imani of the final vestiges of her self-esteem, a commanding voice rang out in the sterile corridor. "Officer Price, report to my office immediately," called Captain Richard Miller, a man whose reputation for fairness was well known among those who truly cared about justice. His tone brooked no argument, and even the hardened officer paused in her actions as she glanced toward the door. The abrupt interruption startled Imani, who could hear the raised voices in the distance. Hope flickered in her heart as she wondered if someone would finally stand up for her. Moments later, Officer Price was summoned into Captain Miller's office. There, Darius Lewis, dressed in a plain, unassuming suit that belied the intensity of his secret life, stood waiting with an expression of deep concern and controlled fury. Captain Miller, whose eyes were keen and measured, addressed Officer Price with a stern rebuke. "Your actions tonight have compromised not only the dignity of a young citizen, but have also interfered with a federal operation of critical importance," he said in a voice that left no room for excuses. "I expect better from someone sworn to uphold the law and protect all citizens, regardless of appearances." Officer Price's face paled as the full weight of her mistake sank in. The revelation that Imani was the daughter of Darius Lewis, a man of considerable influence in a high-stakes undercover mission, struck her like a physical blow. Her rigid demeanor faltered, and for the first time that night, she looked uncertain and contrite. Captain Miller continued, "You must understand that your narrow assumptions and prejudiced actions have far-reaching consequences. In your zeal to enforce protocol, you have not only humiliated a child, but you have also endangered a crucial mission that has the potential to save countless lives." Meanwhile, back in the holding cell, Imani listened in muffled disbelief as distant voices and footsteps indicated that a change was coming. She had never felt more alone and exposed, yet a small spark of resilience still burned within her. She clutched her violin case as if it were a talisman, a reminder of the beauty she had created and the hope that music could bring. Even as tears blurred her vision, she vowed silently that she would not allow this moment of degradation to define her. Darius Lewis, now aware of the situation, had arrived at the station and demanded the immediate release of his daughter. His authoritative presence and the knowledge of his federal connections forced the station officials to comply, albeit grudgingly. With Imani finally reunited with her father, the harsh fluorescent lights of the holding room gave way to the warmth of a father's embrace. Darius whispered comforting words, apologizing on behalf of a system that had failed her, and promising that he would do everything in his power to ensure that such injustice would never occur again. The events of that night sent shockwaves through the community. News of the incident spread quickly, drawing attention from local activists, media outlets, and civil rights groups. The public outcry was immediate and passionate. Many condemned the actions of Officer Price as a stark reminder of the prejudice that still haunted law enforcement. Demonstrations were organized, and calls for reform echoed through City Hall. In the midst of this upheaval, Darius continued his covert work, his mission now more critical than ever. The criminal network he had been working to dismantle was known for its ruthlessness and its ability to exploit the vulnerabilities of the community. Every moment of delay could have dire consequences, and the disruption caused by the incident at the police station threatened to expose sensitive operations and endanger lives. For Officer Price, the night marked a turning point in her career and in her life. The confrontation with Captain Miller and the exposure of her actions forced her to confront the deep-seated biases that had guided her decisions for far too long. In the solitude of her small apartment later that night, she replayed every moment in her mind. The image of Imani's tear-streaked face haunted her thoughts, and the memory of the delicate braids that had been so cruelly stripped away filled her with a remorse that was hard to shake. She began to question the very foundations of her beliefs and the training that had taught her to judge a person solely by their appearance. In a moment of introspection, she realized that she had allowed fear and prejudice to override justice and compassion. The process of redemption was not instantaneous for Officer Price. Over the following weeks, she was placed on administrative leave while an internal investigation unfolded. During that time, she attended mandatory sensitivity training and participated in community outreach programs designed to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the neighborhoods they served. The journey was painful and fraught with setbacks, but slowly, she began to see the world through a different lens. In conversations with community leaders and survivors of similar injustices, she discovered that the wounds inflicted by prejudice ran deep and that healing required sincere acknowledgement of past wrongs. Her transformation was neither swift nor complete, but it was genuine. She vowed to become an advocate for change within the force, determined to ensure that no other child would suffer the same indignity that Imani had endured. Imani, on the other hand, found strength in her ordeal. The incident became a turning point in her young life. Though the scars of that night were deep, she channeled her pain into her art. In the months that followed, she dedicated herself to mastering the violin even further. Every practice session was a defiant act against the forces that had tried to silence her. Her performances grew in emotional depth and technical brilliance, capturing the attention of audiences far and wide. Critics lauded her ability to convey the full spectrum of human emotion through her music, and she soon became a symbol of resilience and hope in her community. Darius Lewis continued his dangerous mission against the criminal network that threatened countless lives. The incident at the police station had forced him to accelerate his plans, and he found himself juggling the responsibilities of being a devoted father with the high-stakes demands of his covert work. Despite the risks, he remained steadfast in his belief that justice could prevail if people were willing to stand up and fight for what was right. His dual life was a constant source of tension, but the love he shared with Imani was the beacon that guided him through even the darkest moments. As the public debate over police misconduct and systemic bias grew louder, Imani's story became a rallying cry for reform. Community forums, televised debates, and social media campaigns all echoed the call for accountability and fairness. Darius was interviewed by respected journalists who marveled not only at his bravery as a federal agent, but also at his unwavering commitment to protecting his daughter. In every interview, he emphasized that the incident was not an isolated event, but rather a symptom of a much larger problem that needed to be addressed. He spoke passionately about the need for comprehensive training, cultural sensitivity, and the dismantling of prejudice practices that had long undermined public trust in law enforcement. Amid the turmoil, a surprising alliance began to form. Officer Price, now undergoing her own journey of redemption, reached out to community leaders and activists who had once condemned her. She began working with advocacy groups to develop training programs that would help other officers recognize and overcome their own biases. Slowly, her efforts started to yield results, and she found herself invited to speak at conferences and public meetings about the importance of empathy and understanding in law enforcement. Though her past actions could never be forgotten, she hoped that by sharing her story, she might help prevent future injustices. In a poignant turn of events, Imani was invited to perform at a benefit concert dedicated to supporting victims of police misconduct and promoting community healing. The event was held at a renowned cultural center, and the atmosphere was charged with emotion and hope. As Imani stepped onto the stage, she could feel the weight of the past melting away, replaced by a sense of purpose that transcended the pain of that fateful night. With her violin in hand, she began to play a new composition, one that was at once sorrowful and triumphant. The music soared and dipped, its every note a testament to the journey from victimhood to empowerment. The audience sat spellbound, many moved to tears by the raw emotion conveyed through her performance. During the concert, Darius watched with pride as his daughter transformed her grief into a beautiful melody of resilience. The event became a turning point not only for Imani, but also for the entire community. It was a powerful reminder that even in the face of injustice, art could serve as a healing force, a way to bridge divides and mend broken hearts. In that moment, Imani was more than just a survivor of prejudice. She was an artist whose music carried the promise of a better tomorrow. The benefit concert garnered widespread media attention, and Imani's story soon spread far beyond her hometown. Articles and television segments celebrated her courage, while social media buzzed with messages of support and admiration. People from all walks of life reached out to her, sharing their own stories of overcoming discrimination and injustice. The collective outpouring of solidarity helped to further galvanize efforts for systemic reform within the police force and the broader criminal justice system. For Darius Lewis, The renewed focus on his daughter's plight brought both relief and renewed determination. His mission to dismantle the criminal network had taken on an added personal urgency. Every day, he worked tirelessly in the shadows, gathering intelligence and building a case that would finally bring the dangerous syndicate to justice. His covert operations were fraught with peril, but the memory of Imani's tearful eyes and the humiliation she had endured spurred him on. He vowed that no matter the cost, he would not allow those who exploited the vulnerable to go unpunished. As weeks turned into months, the wounds inflicted by that terrible night began to slowly heal. Officer Price, now on the path of redemption, became a quiet advocate for change within her department. She attended counseling sessions, engaged in community dialogue, and dedicated herself to mentoring young recruits about the importance of empathy in law enforcement. Though her reputation would forever bear the stain of her past actions, she hoped that her efforts would serve as a lasting lesson for others in the force. Imani, too, emerged from the darkness of that night transformed. Her journey from humiliation to empowerment had instilled in her a profound sense of responsibility. Determined to use her talent to inspire change, she began to mentor young, aspiring musicians in her community. She organized free violin workshops at local community centers and schools, encouraging children to embrace their heritage and to find strength in their art. Her story resonated deeply with many, and she became a beacon of hope for those who had suffered under the weight of discrimination. One chilly evening, several months after the incident, Imani found herself alone in her room, her violin resting gently on her lap. The soft glow of a bedside lamp illuminated a framed photo of her and her father, smiling together on a day that now seemed like a distant memory of untroubled joy. As she tuned her instrument, she reflected on the tumultuous journey that had brought her to this point. The pain of that rainy night, the humiliation at the hands of Officer Price, and the uncertainty of the days that followed had all given way to a resolute determination to rise above injustice. In the quiet solitude of that moment, Imani made a silent promise to herself that she would always use her voice through music to stand up for truth and dignity. Across town, Darius Lewis received news that his ongoing operation against the criminal network had reached a crucial juncture. The intelligence he had painstakingly gathered over the years was about to culminate in a decisive strike against a notorious syndicate known for its ruthlessness and its insidious influence over local communities. The success of this mission would not only cripple a dangerous organization, but also send a powerful message that corruption and exploitation would not be tolerated. As he prepared for the final phase of his operation, Darius could not help but feel that the events of that night at the police station had, in a strange way, strengthened his resolve. The personal injustice inflicted upon his daughter had become intertwined with his professional duty, fueling his determination to bring about lasting change. In the days that followed, the community rallied around both Imani and Darius. Vigils were held, public meetings organized, and leaders from various sectors joined forces to demand accountability and reform. The story of a young violinist who had been unjustly humiliated by a callous officer became a symbol of the need for empathy and the dismantling of systemic prejudice. Protests and petitions called for a comprehensive review of police practices, and local government officials pledged to work toward creating a system that truly protected all citizens regardless of appearance. Officer Price, meanwhile, struggled with the consequences of her actions. Although she had been temporarily suspended from duty, her future in law enforcement remained uncertain. The internal investigation that followed was thorough, and many of her colleagues spoke openly about the need for change. In a rare moment of introspection, Officer Price sat alone in her small apartment and revisited every moment of that fateful encounter. The memory of Imani's dignified yet defiant gaze, even as her braids were cruelly removed, haunted her. She realized that her actions had been driven by deeply ingrained biases, passed down through a system that valued appearances over truth. Determined to make amends, she began volunteering with organizations dedicated to bridging the gap between law enforcement and minority communities. though the path to redemption would be long and arduous. She vowed to work every day to earn back the trust that had been shattered. As autumn gave way to winter, Imani's life took on a new rhythm. Her violin became her voice in a world that had tried to silence her. Each performance was an act of defiance and a celebration of resilience. Her music, filled with both sorrow and hope, captivated audiences far beyond her hometown. Invitations to perform at charity events and cultural festivals poured in, and she used these opportunities not only to showcase her talent, but also to advocate for social justice. In interviews, Imani spoke with quiet conviction about the power of art to heal wounds and to bring people together. "My music is my truth," she would say, "and no one can take that away from me." Darius Lewis continued to work diligently on his mission, his every success measured against the risk that had once endangered his daughter. The criminal network he was targeting had grown increasingly bold, but with the combined support of the community and the renewed determination that came from personal loss, his efforts gained momentum. His dual life, as both a loving father and a relentless federal agent, was fraught with tension. But he found strength in the knowledge that every step he took brought him closer to dismantling a force that had long exploited the vulnerable. In time, the narrative began to shift. The media, once quick to highlight the injustice faced by Imani, started to focus on the broader issues of systemic reform and the personal stories of transformation within law enforcement. Officer Price, in a rare televised interview, offered a heartfelt apology for her actions. She spoke candidly about her journey of self-reflection and the painful lessons she had learned. While many remained skeptical of her motives, her willingness to confront her own shortcomings opened the door for a broader conversation about accountability and change within the force. The story of Imani Lewis and her unwavering courage in the face of prejudice resonated with thousands. It inspired art, literature, and even grassroots initiatives aimed at fostering better relations between the police and the communities they served. Local schools began hosting workshops on cultural pride and the importance of standing up against discrimination, and Imani herself was invited to speak at several events. Her message was simple and profound: that every person, no matter how young, possessed the power to challenge injustice and to forge a future built on respect and dignity. One crisp winter evening, as the first light of dawn broke through the frosty sky, Imani sat quietly in her modest living room, her violin resting beside her. The room was filled with the soft glow of a single lamp, and outside, the city was slowly awakening. In that moment of stillness, she reflected on all that had transpired, the pain, the humiliation, and ultimately, the redemption that had emerged from it all. She thought of her father, whose tireless efforts in the shadows had not only protected her, but had also contributed to a safer community. She thought of Officer Price, whose path to redemption was still uncertain, but whose willingness to change gave hope that even the most deeply ingrained prejudices could be overcome. Imani picked up her violin and began to play a gentle, soulful melody. The notes rose and fell in a delicate cadence, each one echoing the resilience of her spirit and the enduring power of truth. In that quiet performance, she found solace and strength. The music was not just a form of self-expression. It was a declaration that she would no longer allow the cruelty of the past to dictate her future. With every stroke of the bow, she reclaimed her dignity, transforming the pain of that terrible night into a symphony of hope and renewal. As weeks turned into months, the incident that had once threatened to shatter Imani's world became a catalyst for lasting change. Community leaders, inspired by her bravery, pushed for comprehensive reforms in the police department, and public pressure led to increased oversight and better training for officers. The story of a young violinist whose identity had been assaulted by prejudice became a symbol of a movement dedicated to justice and human dignity. Darius Lewis's covert operations also reached a turning point. The intelligence he had gathered against the criminal network culminated in a series of daring raids that resulted in the arrest of several high-ranking members of the syndicate. The success of these operations not only disrupted the organization's activities, but also sent a clear message that corruption and exploitation would no longer be tolerated. Though the risks remained high, Darius took solace in the knowledge that his work was making a real difference in the lives of countless people. Throughout this turbulent period, Imani remained a beacon of strength. Her performances grew more impassioned, and her music became a vehicle for social change. She collaborated with local musicians, poets, and activists to create benefit concerts and community events that celebrated diversity and resilience. The threads of her story interwove with those of the community, forming a tapestry of hope and renewal that touched the hearts of many. Officer Karen Price, too, continued on her path of transformation. Plagued by guilt and driven by a sincere desire to atone for her past mistakes, she immersed herself in community service. She volunteered at youth centers and organized listening sessions with families affected by police misconduct. Although the road to rebuilding trust was long and uncertain, she made steady progress, slowly shedding the armor of prejudice that had once defined her. In private moments, she would reflect on the incident with Imani and promise herself that she would never again allow fear and bias to cloud her judgment. Her journey was one of painful introspection and gradual redemption. And though many would never forgive her fully, she found solace in the fact that her actions had sparked a broader conversation about the need for compassion in law enforcement. One day, as spring began to soften the chill of winter, Imani was invited to perform an outdoor music festival dedicated to celebrating the arts and promoting social justice. The festival was held in a sprawling park filled with blooming cherry trees and the gentle hum of community life. As Imani took the stage beneath a canopy of vibrant blossoms, she felt a deep sense of gratitude for how far she had come. The festival crowd, representing people from all walks of life, listened in rapt silence as she played her violin with a passion that was both raw and uplifting. Each note was a testament to her journey, a journey that had seen her stripped of her beauty by cruelty, only to rise again with a spirit that could not be broken. The performance marked a new chapter in Imani's life. It was a moment of collective healing, as the music resonated with every heart in the crowd. The beauty of her melody was not merely in its technical perfection, but in the profound message it carried, that even in the face of injustice, one could reclaim one's identity and emerge stronger. In the days following the festival, letters of admiration and support poured in from around the country. Young people wrote to Imani, sharing how her story had inspired them to speak up against discrimination. Local newspapers ran op-eds about the need for systemic reform, and community leaders organized meetings to address the issues raised by the incident. Darius Lewis, ever the vigilant guardian, continued to work behind the scenes to dismantle the criminal networks that threatened society. His operations, though fraught with danger, began to yield results, and the cracks in the once impenetrable syndicate became ever more apparent. In one particularly daring operation, Darius led a team of federal agents in a nighttime raid that resulted in the arrest of several key figures within the organization. The success of that operation was a significant blow to the criminal network and was widely celebrated as a triumph of justice over corruption. Yet, even in the midst of these high-stakes operations, Darius never lost sight of the personal cost of his double life. He made it a point to spend quiet moments with Imani whenever he could, sharing with her his hopes for a future free from fear and injustice. The narrative of Imani's ordeal and subsequent triumph gradually took on a life of its own, evolving into a powerful symbol of resilience and the transformative power of art. Public debates, community forums, and even school curricula began to include discussions about the incident, ensuring that the lessons learned would not be forgotten. In a city that had once been marred by tension and mistrust, the story of a young violinist who had refused to be silenced served as a clarion call for change, a reminder that every individual had the power to stand up for their rights and demand dignity. In the midst of all this, Officer Price continued to work diligently on her path toward redemption. Though her career had been derailed by the events of that night, she slowly began to rebuild her life through sincere acts of service and self-improvement. Her meetings with community groups became more frequent, and she found herself mentoring new recruits, urging them to learn from her mistakes and to approach every situation with compassion and understanding. Over time, some in the community, though still wary, began to see her not merely as the officer who had once humiliated a young girl, but as a human being capable of growth and change. As the seasons changed once again and summer approached, Imani prepared for another performance, this time at a benefit concert organized by a coalition of artists, activists, and community leaders. The event was held in an open-air amphitheater by the river, with a gentle sound of water mingled with the soft rustling of trees. Under a starlit sky, Imani took the stage once more, her violin held with both confidence and vulnerability. With each bow stroke, she poured out her heart, creating a melody that was at once melancholic and hopeful. The music told a story of struggle and redemption, of a journey from the depths of despair to the heights of empowerment. The audience listened in rapt silence, each person touched by the raw, unfiltered emotion that radiated from the young artist. In the weeks after that performance, Imani found that her music had become a source of healing not only for herself, but for many others. She began receiving invitations to perform at community events, workshops, and even televised programs. Her story resonated with a broad audience, and she was often asked about the night that had changed her life. With grace and quiet strength, Imani recounted her experience, emphasizing that while the pain had been profound, it had also forged within her an unbreakable spirit. She spoke of the importance of standing up for one's dignity and of using one's voice, whether through music or words, to fight against injustice. Darius Lewis, too, experienced a personal transformation as the incident spurred him to re-examine the balance between duty and family. The constant pressure of his covert operations had long kept him isolated, but the public attention on Imani's case reminded him of the importance of vulnerability and connection. In quiet moments away from the dangers of his work, he and Imani would share long conversations about their dreams, their fears, and their hopes for a more just world. These moments of intimacy strengthened the bond between them and reaffirmed Darius's commitment to protecting not only his daughter, but the values that had brought him to the dangerous world of undercover operations. As the years passed, the legacy of that fateful night continued to influence the lives of everyone involved. Imani's journey from humiliation to empowerment became a symbol of resistance and a catalyst for change. The story of a young violinist who had been stripped of her braids by an officer blinded by prejudice inspired countless individuals to question their own assumptions and to demand accountability from those in positions of power. Community centers, schools, and even local government offices began to incorporate programs and policies aimed at addressing systemic bias and promoting cultural sensitivity. Officer Karen Price, now older and wiser, often reflected on the long road she had traveled. She had come to understand that true authority was not measured by rigid adherence to protocol, but by the ability to see the humanity in every person. Though she could never undo the harm she had caused, she dedicated her later years to mentoring young officers and advocating for reform within the department. Her journey of redemption was marked by moments of quiet introspection and public service. And while the memories of that night would always haunt her, they also served as a constant reminder of the power of change. In a poignant twist of fate, Imani's music continued to flourish, and she eventually became a celebrated artist in her own right. Her performances were marked by an intensity that spoke of a deep well of experience and a commitment to justice that resonated with audiences far and wide. Critics praised her for her ability to convey complex emotions with a simplicity that touched the soul. In interviews, Imani never shied away from discussing the events that had once threatened to break her spirit, instead choosing to frame them as the catalyst for her growth and artistic evolution. One memorable summer evening, during a gala held to honor community heroes, Imani took the stage one last time before embarking on an international tour. As she performed her signature piece, a composition that had come to be known simply as the Violin's Lament, the crowd was visibly moved. Every note she played carried the weight of her journey, the pain of her past, and the hope for a future defined by understanding and compassion. In that moment, as the final chord resonated through the night, the audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation, not just for the beauty of the music, but for the courage of a young woman who had transformed her trials into a symphony of triumph. For Darius Lewis, the culmination of years of perilous work against a shadowy criminal network brought a bittersweet sense of closure. The operation that had once risked everything in the face of corruption and exploitation was eventually successful, leading to the dismantling of an organization that had spread fear and suffering for far too long. Though the sacrifices had been great, Darius took solace in the fact that his efforts had contributed to a safer community, one where his daughter, and children like her, could grow up without the threat of injustice looming over them. In the quiet aftermath of these hard-won victories, Imani and her father found a new rhythm in life. They continued to work side by side, each contributing in their own way to the betterment of their community. Imani's music became a healing force, a reminder that beauty and resilience could emerge from even the darkest of experiences. Darius, ever the vigilant protector, remained committed to using his skills to combat corruption while cherishing the moments of tenderness he shared with his daughter. The tale of that autumn night, when a young girl was unjustly humiliated by a biased officer, transformed into a beacon of hope and change for many. It served as a reminder that every person, regardless of their background, deserved to be treated with respect and dignity. The story also highlighted the potential for redemption, even for those who had once allowed prejudice to dictate their actions. Officer Price, once a symbol of intolerance, became an unlikely advocate for reform, her journey echoing the possibility that no one is beyond the reach of transformation when they open their hearts to truth and compassion. In the years that followed, the community honored Imani's courage by establishing a scholarship fund in her name, aimed at supporting young musicians from underrepresented backgrounds. Local schools integrated her story into their curricula, teaching students about the power of art to overcome adversity and the importance of standing up against injustice. Public forums and town hall meetings frequently cited her experience as a turning point that had spurred meaningful reforms in law enforcement practices and community relations. Every time Imani performed, whether in a small community gathering or on an international stage, her music carried a message of resilience. The haunting strains of her violin were a testament to the strength that comes from embracing one's identity, even in the face of dehumanizing prejudice. Through her art, she reminded the world that beauty could be found in the struggle and that every individual had the right to define their own destiny. Darius Lewis, now regarded as a hero in both his professional and personal circles, continued to mentor young agents, emphasizing that the fight for justice was not just about taking down criminals, but also about protecting the innocent and upholding the dignity of every person. He often spoke of the lessons he had learned from his daughter, whose unwavering spirit had taught him that true courage was found in vulnerability and that the bonds of family were the most powerful weapon against injustice. As the story of Imani's struggle and triumph spread far beyond the borders of her city, it ignited a movement that inspired people to look beyond superficial appearances and to recognize the humanity that connected them all. The legacy of that painful night was transformed into a symbol of hope, a reminder that every act of cruelty could be met with an act of kindness, and every moment of prejudice could be overcome by a commitment to justice and equality. In the end, the violin's lament, a tale of courage and redemption, was not merely a story about an unjust encounter between a biased officer and a young musician. It was a narrative about the transformative power of love, the healing properties of art, and the possibility of change when individuals choose to confront their own shortcomings. It was a story that celebrated the resilience of the human spirit and honored the promise that every life, no matter how seemingly small, could contribute to the greater good. Imani's music, echoing through concert halls and quiet neighborhoods alike, continued to remind people that every note was a testament to the strength of the soul. And Darius Lewis, with the quiet dignity of a father and the steely resolve of an undercover agent, carried forward his mission to protect the innocent and bring light to the darkest corners of society. Together, their journey stood as a powerful testament to the belief that justice, when pursued with unwavering determination and compassion, could heal wounds and create a better future for all. As the years passed, the memory of that fateful encounter began to fade from the headlines, replaced by new challenges and triumphs. Yet the impact of that night lived on in every child who took up a musical instrument, in every officer who underwent training to overcome bias, and in every community that dared to demand better. It served as an enduring reminder that even when the world seemed cold and unyielding, the human spirit could rise above it all through courage, creativity, and compassion. In this way, the legacy of Amani's ordeal and subsequent transformation transcended the boundaries of her own life, becoming a beacon of hope for future generations. It was a legacy written in music and etched in the hearts of those who believed in the power of redemption. And so, as Imani Lewis continued to play her violin on stages both near and far, her every performance sang a song of hope, a song that would forever inspire others to stand up for truth, embrace their unique identities, and pursue justice with all the passion and resilience that define the human spirit.